It's no coincidence that the Bering Strait 2013 project started in Yakutia's capital, the same city that Semyon Dezhnyov's expedition set out from in the 17th century. Cossacks had launched 3 marine expeditions to the river Anadyr from Yakutsk. 2 attempts had failed. It was only on the 3rd try in the summer of 1648 that Semyon Dezhnyov managed to pass through the strait between Chukotka and Alaska. 92 men went to sea, but only 12 survived. By a curious coincidence, an international team of cold water swimmers made 2 attempts to swim across the Bering Strait in 2011 and 2012. But the task was insurmountable. Those waters are the harshest in the world. The swimmers tried twice from Kamchatka, but they were frustrated and both attempts failed. Usual methods were simply not good enough. This extremely difficult task required a completely different approach. To swimmers, the Bering Strait is what Mount Everest's summit was to mountain climbers, a most cherished dream. In the northernmost part of the Pacific, where it meets the Arctic Ocean, the water's ice cold and the polar air is freezing even in the summer. Deciding to go on a 100-kilometer swim without any heat insulation or indeed any equipment at all is rather unusual.
Беринг, да? Да, на Беринг. Давай, проходите. Кто на Беринг, заходите.
But for those who gathered in Yakutsk on the 29th of July 2013, an opportunity to be part of this record-setting swim was something to be relished. Experienced swimmers from 16 countries and 10 Russian cities flocked to Yakutsk. The Russian Geographic Society and the Eastern Military District of Russia had recruited these enthusiasts to attempt a decidedly risky and uncertain endeavor. 365 years after the strait's discovery, these people were willing to attempt to bridge the gap between the 2 coasts. Serious preparations for the swim began only after the leaders of the Kosatka Ice Swimming Association of Khabarovsk region had approached Admiral Konstantin Sidenko, commander of the Eastern Military District, and by chance, president of the Cold Water Swimming Federation of Russia. It was then that the expedition to the Bering Strait started to take shape. Everything was clear. It would be the swimmers' job to swim their part of the distance, and the Air Force and the Navy would take care of the rest. All teams were given visa and customs support because the route crossed the border between Russia and the U.S.A. A Russian naval ship was granted permission to stay in U.S. waters. The members of many teams were no strangers to discipline and order. They had backgrounds in their country's military and even special forces.
In South Africa, we are very close to Antarctica, and I swim in Antarctica.
В Южной Африке мы очень близки к Антарктиде, и я совершала заплыв в Антарктиде.
And until 1 year ago, I never been to Russia, never thought I'd come to Russia.
И до прошлого года я никогда не был в России, даже никогда не думал, что я здесь когда-нибудь побываю.
And just in the last year, I've been to Russia 4 times, and it looks like I need to move to Russia because that's where the real action in cold water swimming happens.
С тех пор я побыла в России уже 4 раза, и у меня такое ощущение, что мне пора бы сюда переехать, потому что именно здесь происходит самое важное событие в области зимнего плавания.
seen a lot of people swimming in a lake or in small places, but this is going to be in the open sea.
Я много раз видел, как люди плавают в озерах, реках, но это будет заплыв в открытом море.
And requires a lot of mental strength, not only physical strength.
Для этого нужно очень много не только физической, но и именно психической, моральной силы.
Okay. Because of the challenge, I'm sure there will be quite a lot of drama, which is part of it.
Я думаю, что этот заплыв будет очень драматичным, потому что это очень серьезный и очень сложный заплыв. Но я не сомневаюсь, что все у нас получится.
But I'm very positive that we can do it.
International teams included outstanding swimmers who had set records in various waters around the globe, from the coast of Patagonia and South Africa to the North Sea and the English Channel. One of the swimmers, James Pitter of Australia, was a visually impaired para-Olympian, and the support he received during the swim exemplified the Bering 2013 team's outstanding spirit. Swimmers from the Russian team spent 2 years preparing for the Bering Strait relay. They had swum several swimathons in the cold waters of the Tartar Strait and the Amur Bay. Teams from Khabarovsk and Blagoveshchensk collectively accumulated over 1,000 kilometers on the Amur River. It should be noted that there are practically no age limits for mountain climbers and cold water swimmers. They are a very special breed, with extraordinary endurance and willpower. Comparing swimmers with climbers is legitimate. In cold waters and places like the Himalayas, humans are at deadly risk. Life depends on the ability to exercise one's will and be fearless in that zone between life and death. The commander's airplane flew participants from Moscow and Khabarovsk to Yakutsk and from there to Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky.
Yellow blue bus.
Before the race, there were meetings, press conferences, and warm hospitality in Yakutia's capital. The time spent in Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky was probably even more important. The swimmers used it to acclimatize, recover from jet lag, and to familiarize themselves with the new environment and the customs of the indigenous people. They also tested the waters of the Lena River and the Russian Pacific. On the evening of 31st of July 2013, the expedition participants got together on board the Irtish, the Navy's hospital ship that was to serve as the swimathon's base, providing the swimmers and their support teams with everything they needed. The Navy's military hospital, complete with medical personnel, treatment and rehabilitation equipment, 3 extra boats specially added to accompany the swimmers, and an experienced crew, was fully prepared for a long expedition. As soon as the civilians were on board, the military way was made clear to them, so as to avoid any misunderstanding.
Товарищ, я начальник отряда. Зовут меня Виктор Николаевич.
Hello everyone, I'm the expedition commander. My name's Victor Torbin.
Потом расскажете
Interpreters,
людям, которые не понимают.
please communicate the gist later to those who don't speak Russian.
Я на всем переходе, здесь старший. Меня не волнует, кто вы там, генерал, женщина, мальчик.
I'm in charge during the expedition, and I don't care whether you're a general, a woman, or a boy. You must do what I say. Your life will depend on the captain's commands and mine. Whether we return will depend on how well we do things. Thank you for being here and for listening. I hope that we will all come back in good health in 10 to 15 days. The historical coincidences continued. The Irtish's route from the port of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky to Cape Dezhnyov has a rich history, filled with the names of Russian explorers. The ship followed the same route as Commander Vitus Bering's first expedition in 1724, made according to Peter the Great's order, to the north, to discover whether America joins Asia. At that time, academics were yet to come across Semyon Dezhnyov's travel reports in the Yakutsk archives, and world maps had blank spots in the north of the Pacific Ocean. Two Russian expeditions by Vitus Bering and Alexei Chirikov in the early 18th century completed the Age of Discovery. They had sailed and accurately measured the coordinates of the strait, the coasts of Chukotka and Alaska, and many islands. The Russian explorers made the first, and to this day, the most accurate maps of the northern Pacific. James Cook's Royal British Expedition arrived in the Aleutian Islands 40 years later, in 1768. It was there that Captain Cook met Russian sailors. It's well known that Cook redrew his map and named the strait dividing Asia and America after Bering. So that was how the destination for the Bering 2013 expedition and intercontinental swimathon got on the map. It took the Irtish 5 days to travel from Kamchatka to Cape Dezhnyov, so expedition members had time to get acquainted. The expedition numbered 122, not counting the Irtish's crew and doctors. International teams brought their own coaches, journalists and doctors. A TV crew, sports doctors and the leaders of the Veterans Council of the Eastern Military District attended the Russian team. Well, finally got there. Yes, finally the Bering Strait. We'll swim across, over there. There were also 3 people on board who had a special mission. The unusual thing about the journey was that none of the organizers, expedition managers, the Irtish's officers and crew, international teams of swimmers and researchers, or journalists had ever crossed the Bering Strait. With the exception of one person who was going to the strait for the second time, it was a first for everybody. In fact, as later events showed, this person was indispensable. Let's introduce world record holder Yevgeny Novazhev, who together with Konstantin Aksyonov crossed the Bering Strait on a kiteboard in July 2011. They covered the Chukotka-Alaska route in 7 hours and 52 minutes. With no support or rescue team, Yevgeny and Konstantin were the first people to cross the 170-kilometer wide strait without the aid of a boat. They did it during a storm by accurately assessing the wind situation and calculating to the minute the start and finish time. That was the kind of expert the team organizers had invited to help navigate and manage the expedition. This is Cape Payek. It's less windy here, or so it's believed, and that protrusion is the Great Chukotka Nose, later renamed Cape Diomede. It's that way, over there. We shall have to get on the other side of it, but for now, we're sheltered from the north wind. On the morning of 5th of August 2013, the Irtish and a seagoing tug arrived at Cape Diomede. The plan for the swimathon was that a group of swimmers would be taken to their starting points on 2 boats. 3 swimmers and a starter navigator judge on each. Each swimmer, after a relay touch in the water with the previous swimmer, would swim for 20 minutes. The starter navigator judge would use a GPS device to accurately record the start and finish points and the time for each swimmer. The data would be transmitted to the race HQ, where the coordinates for the stage would be put on a map. The average swim speed was assumed to be 3 kilometers an hour, and the distance would be between 110 and 120 kilometers, depending on the currents, and the total race time 40 hours. The base ship would maneuver along the course of the swim, while the other ship, the seagoing tug, would indicate the direction and be prepared to render first aid. That was the plan, but upon arrival at Cape Diomede, the race HQ decided that time in the water would be set for each individual swimmer, and only after reconnaissance covering the state of the weather, water temperature and speed of the currents. The date, time and location of the starting points would be set only after this survey. The escort boats were launched. The groups led by Viktor Torbin and Yevgeny Novazhev approached the Cape to measure the currents and temperatures, while Ram Barkai's group of swimmers set out towards the starting point for a test swim to give the other participants an accurate idea of what to expect.
Difficult trip to Diomede, but what can we expect if we go to the top of the world? The most eastern point of the Eurasian continent. Trying to reach it for a long time now. Finally, get there hopefully. Make this swim happen. Let's go reach Diomede. Let's make this swim. Reach Alaska. Semyon Diomede.
This is the monument to Semyon Diomede, and over there we have the old village of Naukan. And they have a Semyon Diomede monument too.
Точно такой же туман. .9.
8.9.
Да. 8. Тепло.
Тепло. Скажи, сегодня кто-нибудь будет плавать или нет?
Tell me, will anyone swim today?
Иногда.
Sometimes the waves are big.
Иногда.
Sometimes. Who'll swim now? Who'll train? Jack? Then, there may be. There are sometimes big waves and a northerly wind. Big waves, sometimes.
You must find the point there. And you go straight for this point. You show us the point, we swim straight for.
Хорошо, вы уже на берегу? Вопрос прием.
You're taking time.
The test swim by South African swimmers Ram Barkai and Ryan Stramrud lasted 5 minutes. It turned out that the cold got to them the worst during the wait for the start signal, and then after they got back on the boat and had to wait for over 40 minutes in wet clothes, buffeted by fierce winds at temperatures of 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. As a result, the time in the water was cut to 10 minutes. It was also decided to help the swimmers out of the water and onto the boat, since their hands would lose all sensitivity.
Two swimmers, another 10 minutes to get back to the boat. So 20, yeah, so 20 minutes. Something what's in the ring, what's fine. It's
И сейчас спускаемся вниз, собираем всех пловцов, 5 минут совещания, все готовимся, все. Переведи.
and you want to start swimming.
4:30. That's approximately time for start.
And also, also will be 2 guiding strips, for which in each rib will be 2 swimmers.
Yeah, but
You
when you
will
finish
done-
swimming, you wait.
Yes, you will done your swim, another will begin, and you will be delivering to the boat.
But if you're the first swimmer, you swim 10 minutes,
Yes, another
then
one
you wait
waiting.
10 minutes.
Yes, and after you swim, you will wait second one. We will try to do this.
Один творец, только один творец будет на берегу. Вы с воды выпрыгнет в 3-4 метрах, выйдет на берег, сушу его скажем так, зафиксируют видеосъемкой, что он на берегу стоит, и он начнет контролить ее.
Вас понял, здесь сейчас выдохну вас понял.
Добро.
At 4 p.m., the Irtish was at the starting point. The first team of swimmers and a team of judges headed to the shore. On the shore, Yevgeny Novajev recorded the coordinates and start time of the first intercontinental swimming race. Melissa O'Reilly, an athlete from the U.S., was unanimously granted the privilege of swimming the first stage of the Bering 2013 relay.
Andrew, 1 minute. 1 minute, okay.
Enjoy it, Andrew.
I'm going to.
It's lekker.
I hate it, but I'm going to enjoy it.
You're going to love it.
Right.
Oh, awesome, man.
Well, how was it?
Huh?
How was it?
It was lekker. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, lekker. 10 minutes is a nice time.
Okay, 1 minute. Wait. Надо было догнать его и все.
Go, Topsy!
Don't hold this stuff in your hand.
Come on, mate, Topsy!
Have to call the top. Get on the bed.
One after another, the international team of swimmers immediately felt the power of the strait's icy embrace. As they covered the first kilometers, the temperature of the water kept going down, and just 45 minutes later, it was 3 or 4 degrees Celsius at the most. The bitter, salty and dense icy water meant that the 10 minutes in the water were a serious challenge for all the swimmers, and for some it was really shocking. Later, they all said the same thing. A minute felt like an eternity as the chest muscles pressed on the lungs like a vice, making breathing almost impossible. Even for those who had swum among icebergs, the Bering Strait's water turned out to be a tall order. During the first hours of the swim, the Bering Strait ceased to be a geographic name or just a piece of ocean. To all the swimmers, it became a personality, a rival, who had allowed them onto its territory and was now watching their audacious enterprise with a grin. The water was so cold that the swimmers swam at half their normal speed. The strongest only managed to cover up to 600 meters in 10 minutes. Dusk fell quickly. The wind grew stronger and the air temperature dropped to 5 degrees Celsius. The rules of the relay required that the swimmers touched each other. Having no interruptions in the line connecting Eurasia and America was essential for setting a world record. On top of that, it was strictly prohibited for swimmers to use the inflatable safety buoy, part of the swimmers' standard equipment, to rest in the water. Any breach of these rules could invalidate the entire race. So the result of the collective effort depended on each individual swimmer. At the same time, a swimmer could terminate their stage by holding up their hand, which was the signal for the next swimmer to get going. The Bering Strait completely disregarded the promise made by Arctic guidebooks of white nights. The nights were dark, visibility dropped, making it difficult to orient the swimmers, and as if the 12-meter-per-second wind and high waves weren't enough, it started raining. What's up with the ear tissue? Did they sort it? You mean coming closer? I mean putting the ship on the course so the swimmers can see where to swim. They can't see even where you direct them with your hand.
Светите! Вон туда начинай, туда!
Slava, start moving over there. There. Where's the swimmer? Over there. Keep to the right. Come right at me. Slava, replacement. Replace him. Over here, come here. Replacement. The swimmers had to monitor their condition themselves, while the starter's responsibility was to watch the swimmer's behavior closely before and during the stage and be ready to rescue the swimmer without delay. After 10 minutes in such water, the temperature of a swimmer's body and brain is reduced to 32 degrees Celsius. Motor performance of arms and legs deteriorates, as does eyesight and spatial awareness. The current and the wind are dragging me off. We're mooring. You go to the ship, I'll fill in for you. Where are your boys? You should have 6. Look closer. Radio Yakovlevitz and tell him to replace you right now. All right, come closer and change. The 3 hours of the night swim seemed endless. Overcoats and blankets shared by the Irtisches sailors helped the swimmers stay warm before and after their stages. They had to hold on until after they got to the ship's rehabilitation area and the hot sauna. Then they got 3 hours of sleep and after a doctor's check prepared to swim all over again. Do we have wet blankets? The route of the swim was drawn with the northern current in mind, so that the swimmers could benefit from it and move faster towards the southern tip of Ratmanov Island, aka Big Diomede. Hour after hour the swim went on. Dawn broke pale and pink. By the morning of the 6th of August, over 20 kilometers of the strait had been completed and Ratmanov Island had come into sight.
В 1991 году, когда впервые осуществлялся этот проект, переплыть Берингов пролив.
In 1991, when the first attempt to swim across the Bering Strait was made, a team of our swimmers, 8 people, swam from Ratmanov Island to Cape Dezhnev. They did it in 14 hours, but one has to say the weather favored them. This time it was quite something, both yesterday and today. But Lena Gusova, a member of that team, is participating in our swim and is moving toward the goal with much confidence.
Уверенно идет к цели. Сейчас заходим справа от него. Температура воды колеблется от 3,2 до 3,8. Пловцы плывут по 10 минут. Это вот самое оптимальное.
The water temperature ranges from 3.2 to 3.8 degrees. The swimmers do 10-minute stages, the most optimal time, and they do their best to cover the most distance. After all, the water is not 7 or 8 degrees, so it stiffens the muscles a lot, and the swimmer slows down. The whole race slows down. We could have fewer changes, but the swimmer would be slower, and the total time would stretch out.
Общее время, соответственно, будет растягиваться. По прямой, если вот брать от мыса Дежнева до крайней точки между островом.
On a straight line, the distance from Cape Dezhnev to Ratmanov Island is 36 kilometers, but the expedition covered more to go around the southern tip.
Bering Strait Swim, Irlanda, Hayana Nip, New Lamour. Thank you very much. Fantastic journey, excellent adventure. super expedition.
Full understanding in all languages. How are you feeling? Good. Oh, you speak good Russian. Sure.
Next swimmer. Wedle pławca. Nie z rzadu. Wedle. Bliżej k niemu.
Поможешь ему?
Да.
Давай, потихоньку.
In the afternoon, they approached Redmanov Island. The water grew slightly warmer, and by the relay's third round, the swimmers had got used to the strait's stinging water and the perils of climbing up and down the Irtish's gangway. The boats were continuously busy, taking swimmers back and forth. 36 kilometers of the distance were done.
Нет, 10 минут проплыл.
Проплыл, да?
Он, да. Матиас проплыл.
Ну все.
Но замерз очень.
Очень замерз.
Они его это.
Matthias swam for a full 10 minutes, but he was really cold. They wiped him off, covered him with towels and a blanket, and he's sitting there, but the wind is piercing. He needs to dress quickly. Mothership, heading to the mothership.
Двое. 2 минуты и еще 10.
У нас последний вышел 10 минут.
Все было здорово. Замечательно. Да, реально теплее. Градусов 6.
Everything was great. Wonderful. Volodya, was the water warmer? Yes, much warmer. About 6 degrees. We can live with that. What do we do about Jackie? She's lost her boy. It's all right. Let her swim.
Да. Тут 2 катера.
Don't we need to reattach it? No, too much hassle. 2 boats are watching her. Let her swim. She'll be all right. Jackie is a marvel. She'll turn 70 soon, but there's no stopping her. 29 hours in the English Channel. Just imagine that. 29 hours of non-stop swimming between England and France. In the meantime, the race was entering unknown territory. A new segment of the route had to be drawn, and they had to work out what the strait had in store, south of the Diomede Islands. Yevgeny Novazhev's team went on a reconnaissance mission. The kite has almost got dragged under the boat. Well, everyone rushed to the bow. We shall need to sail at least another kilometer to get to the strait between the islands and see what's going on there. So this is the Big Diomede, and the one on the right is the small. The small one's American, the big one's ours. Yes, but the islands were discovered and named by Russians. This one is Ratmanov Island, and that one is Krusenstern Island. Now let us do the measurements between the islands. They told us not to go beyond 169. Can we call them? We are on 169 now, but we need to know what the current is like further on. This is the Irtish. Victor, we're now facing Ratmanov Island's southern cape, but we need to sail another kilometer into the strait. The buckets on ropes are floating anchors, intended to compensate the load from the wind and measure the current speed.
Сколько было? 7.2?
How much was it? 7.2? It's 6.4 now. Measuring the speed of the current between the islands and the water temperature along the tentative route didn't reveal any significant anomalies. However, a large group of walruses on Ratmanov Island's southern tip was a concern, since the true masters of the strait don't like humans and are aggressive at close quarters. The route of the swim was pulled back by several kilometers from that point, so as not to frighten or provoke the sea beasts. They are the guards, or defenders if you will, who rushed into battle. Oh yes, the others are lying down. These are the strong ones. The defenders. Are they always ready to swim across Bering Strait? Yes, in one go. The second night of the race fell. The night of 7th of August turned out to be a serious test for all the swimmers. It was pitch dark and raining heavily. There were gusts of up to 25 meters a second and waves over 4 meters. They say there's a storm coming. How strong? Over force 9, they reckon, depending on the wind situation, on the gusts. As we move on, it'll be even stronger. In such conditions, it was almost impossible to lead the swimmers in the water. They became disorientated. They would move inexplicably, swim in circles, and then strike out toward the light. The starter's signals were drowned in the roar of the waves. But above all, the strong wind and the tall, steep waves made it impossible to watch the swimmers. And there was a serious risk of injury or loss of life if a hull hit them. There's a swimmer right there on the course. Roman, replacement time. Swim to meet them. Tell me where to swim. Over there. To the boat? Yes. All right, I'm jumping in. Jump. Roman, your boat is that one. Roman, yours is behind you. Guys, I'm here.
Одежда! Одежда там же, Ром, я перешел. Мужики, я тут!
After 2 hours of fighting with the strait between the islands in the pitch darkness, an order was issued to interrupt the race and put the boats on board the Irtish. Cover your back, legs and relax for a couple of minutes, then you can dress. Such an eventuality had been anticipated in the rules of the open water relay race. Sasha, are you cold? No, I'm fine. The coordinates of the point of interruption were recorded. By midnight of the 7th of August, the swimmers had covered 59 kilometers of the route. The abrupt night stop was incomprehensible and frightening for people. It required understanding and some risky decisions. A sunny morning on the 7th of August made it possible to get a view of Ratmanov Island and its inhabitants. But doubts and uncertainty hung over the swim team. Conflicting opinions regarding continuing and the team's unreadiness raged, but a decision had to be made, and it was made.
In the clearing stands a boxer and a fighter by his trade, and he carries the reminders of every glove that laid him down or cut him to the ground. In his anger and his shame, I am believing that the fighter still remains. La 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 la.
That night was the first respite for the swimmers, who slept through until 7 in the morning. At 8:30, after breakfast, everybody gathered in the Irtish's gym, the largest room on the ship. There was a birthday celebration, among other things. Impressions were shared, and everyone anxiously awaited the race management's decision. The international recognition, your presence, your views of our country, our unity, all these things make me feel very happy, and I feel young again. I'm so happy. I love you and shall never forget you. First off, I want to say that our dear James Pitter, a member of our team, made his swim yesterday.
Вчера по погодным условиям заплыв был приостановлен. Погодные условия на самом деле были очень суровые, очень большая волна и сильный ветер.
But the weather was really tough, so we had to stop it for safety reasons.
Для нас главнее всего это ваши человеческие жизни.
First of all, we have to go and we have to look for all your lives.
Сегодня, несмотря на то, что погодные условия будут не совсем благоприятные, но тем не менее они позволят нам...
Today, in spite of the unfavorable weather, we'll resume our challenge and continue the race at 10 a.m.
И до пересечения государственной границы Россия-США осталось 500 метров.
To cross the border to the U.S., we have only 500 meters left.
Никому никогда не удавалось это делать вплавь. Давайте соберемся и сегодня это сделаем.
Nobody has ever achieved that by swimming. Let's do it today.
Те, кто никогда не был в Америке, пожалуйста, поднимите свои ручки.
Those who have never been to America, raise your hands. Welcome to America. At 10:30 a.m., the boats with swimmers on board headed to the starting point. There was a sharp, cold wind between the islands, and it was fog-bound. What's more, there was snow on Ratmanov Island. Summer can be like that in the Bering Strait.
Вчера здесь был остановлен заплыв 6 числа, да, это примерно было где-то в 23:30.
On the 6th, the race was interrupted at this location at about 11:30 p.m. because of heavy rain and very large waves. I would say force 3 or 4, and an extremely strong wind. Our boat caught a lot of wind and nearly went over the swimmer.
Попадало даже так, что практически накрывало лодкой пловца. Первый пошел! Первый курс вон на корабль! Сегодня, 7 августа, в 11:10 прибыли в точку по навигатору по GPS.
Today is the 7th of August. At 11, we reached the point where we stopped yesterday, so we continued our expedition to America. Our swimmers from Tumen swam the first stage to cross the border between Russia and the United States of America.
Границу между Россией и Соединенными Штатами Америки. Ты в Америке!
Правда? Реально было хорошо, да? В смысле?
Офигенно было. Сейчас.
Seriously, did the water feel good? It was great. I had no fear this time. It was sunny. I really enjoyed it. I looked down into the depths. The water was amazingly clear. There were jellyfish and all kinds of creatures. I can't tell you how great it felt. I didn't feel cold anymore. My body had adapted. May I go to the steam room? Could you have swum another 10 minutes? I'm not sure how many more minutes, but I could have swum longer. And for the first time, previously, especially the first time, 10 minutes felt so long, endless. But this time I didn't notice how time had flown. When you called me, I thought you wanted to correct the course. the Irtish had entered American territorial waters, so the base ship ran up the Stars and Stripes. Cold water swimming is one of the most extreme sports, if it can be called a sport. Mountain climbing, extreme jumping, ice water swimming and deep diving are not regular contests. Athletes don't compete in terms of scores, times, distance covered, etc. In these sports, you compete with the natural forces of the open ocean, streams of air, vertical cliffs and glaciers, and competitive people tend to choose the most difficult route, one that no one's attempted before. Often, the objective is generally considered to be impossible. The beyond extreme efforts involved open depths of insight and experience inaccessible in regular life. It has to be said that extreme forces shape this special breed of people.
Спасибо, Лена!
Swimmers Jack Bright from the UK and Craig Lenning from the US supported and accompanied James Pitter, who came out for his next stage.
Ведите пловца! Пловца ведите!
Bring him, bring the swimmer.
Джеймс, пловец незрячий. То есть он в вечной темноте, но при этом вот они сейчас плывут в паре с Крейгом. Крейг его напарник.
James is completely blind, but he is swimming paired with Craig, who sets the pace for him. And that pace is pretty good.
Темп очень хороший держит. Я, честно говоря...
The character of such competitors awes me.
Я смотрел на него ночью. Выводил его за...
I watched him at night. I was his starter, and over 5 minutes he deviated from the course only twice and only very slightly. It's really beyond my understanding.
You are ready.
Yeah.
You are okay. Go.
Сколько минут еще?
6.
Dense white heaps of clouds were hanging over the Diomede Islands, and the north wind was pushing them towards the expedition. The Bering Strait turned out to have lots of ways to confuse even these determined people. By 2 p.m. a thick fog had covered everything. Visibility fell to 60 to 100 meters, and the boats were cut off from the base ship. For more than an hour, the escort boats couldn't get back to the base ship because their navigators couldn't see it in the fog. The swimmers continued with their stages, while the expedition commander tried to figure out how to help his crew. I get it. We rely on you here. We agreed that the first one to see the ship would get chocolate. As the chief starter, I simply can't renege on that deal. It was Andrei Kuzmin who was the first to see what looked like the Flying Dutchman. So I'm ceremoniously handing him his prize to the roar of applause. Hooray! Installing antennas on the boats eventually solved the problem. That made it possible to monitor the boats' positions from the Irtish's bridge, and the race continued deep into the night. It was fresh inspiration considering that 2/3 of the route was behind us. The main thing was to cross that mysterious line, which proved to be so hard. It was the line between the Western and Eastern hemispheres, Russia and America, and between today and yesterday. We were crossing a time zone, which was rather hard. Going into the future, we're in step with time, but going to the past seemed like a difficult challenge.
Мне кажется, это очень сложная задача. И жесткие условия плыть.
The race route was passing north of Fairway Rock, a small, uninhabited island that stood in solitude behind the participants' backs for the rest of the race, like a silent guard of the Bering Strait. Day 3 of the race. Most swimmers had each covered 4 to 5 stages. Fatigue was building up, and not everyone was able to recover quickly enough. However, the proximity of the finish line and a water temperature of 10 degrees Celsius gave grounds for optimism. But the formidable Bering Strait still had something in store for the race. Mountain climbers never say we conquered the summit. Rather, they say the mountain allowed us to reach the summit, and most importantly, it let us leave. This is exactly the way the strait behaved. It allowed the swimmers through its icy waters, through darkness, storm, and fog, and to overcome fears of encounters with walruses. It gave them time to think and perhaps pull out of this audacious plan. And now it was preparing its final surprise. It was just 20 kilometers to the finishing line. No obstacles were in sight, and as is usually the case in such situations, victory was being anticipated.
Сегодня 8 августа. Международная команда, можно сказать, приближается к берегам Аляски.
Today is the 8th of August. The international team is getting close to Alaska's shores. We checked the map and our navigation instruments. About 18 kilometers to go. But our own experience told us that the last kilometers were always the hardest. And sure enough, the Bering Strait showed us its full might. We'd been at its mercy for 2 days and been shown all kinds of weather. The forecasts that the weather might change every 2 hours were vindicated. Well, let's hope we reach Alaska today, after all, and put up the Russian flag and American flag. And then, with a sense of a job well done, we'll head home. On the morning of 8th of August, race speeds dropped dramatically as the swimmers hit the wall of a head current that pushed them back. The situation was particularly acute. 8th of August was the last day the base ship was permitted to stay in US waters. So if the finish line wasn't crossed before the time expired, it might never be crossed. Sasha, keep me updated on your 3, on each of them, the distance in meters, all right?
10 minutes.
10 minutes is not a lot. It's fine, they can swim on, but Alaska is not in sight for some reason. Sasha, how is it going? I got the coordinates and we'll check progress in 5 minutes. Let's do that. If there's no progress, we'll interrupt the race, reconnoiter the current, and then resume. Got it? Copy that.
Понял.
17 kilometers, 378 meters. Are we moving at all? The strongest swimmers were doing their best, but couldn't move forward a single inch. What could the others do?
Сколько минут? 3,5 до смены.
How many minutes? 3.5 till the change.
Сейчас будет 8 минут и прошел где-то метров.
It'll now be 8, and Edik moved 150 meters to the south. Put the point on the map, take the swimmers out of the water, and then you go and survey the current. Yes, I was swimming as fast as I could, and it seemed like I was pacing the boat. I thought I was moving fast, but in reality I was just swaying about and couldn't break through.
Север 65 градусов, 37, 0,16. Запад 168 градусов, 33, 352.
The trajectory is crooked. Let's move farther away and see.
Значит, около 6 часов я вынужден был остановить заплыв в связи с тем, что 3 последние смены за 1,5 часа проплыли 50 метров.
At about 6 o'clock, I had to interrupt the race because the last 3 shifts had only covered 50 meters in an hour and a half. I sent out a team to survey the southern current to determine its width, speed and direction. To break through the current, we need a speed of 3 to 4 kilometers an hour. So we decided to choose the strongest swimmers who used only crawl. We selected 30 swimmers. We were 19 kilometers from America and had to complete our mission very fast.
Мы в 19 километрах от Америки, и мы должны очень быстро закончить нашу задачу.
Надо южную точку делать, тоже лететь сейчас. Треугольник. Не, он притормаживает. Представь, ветер, вот течение. Вот так течение нужно, давай, да? А вот так ветер. Все в соплях, как океанографическая экспедиция. Замеры сняты, возвращаемся на базу.
Крылов, ЕРТ-4.
четко курс на юго-восток сначала и прорываться. Придется лишний километров дать. Много.
We'll head southeast and try to get through. We'll have to cover many extra kilometers and just struggle and struggle some more. 4 kilometers an hour. We need the most determined ones, and we shall have to fight for at least 10 hours. That's the only way. We're dealing with a river. At least the water's warm. It's 13.5 degrees, feels like Miami.
Look at you? Okay.
Мы вышли в точку координат для продолжения нашего эстафетного заплыва.
We're at the coordinates from where we can continue our relay race.
Принял.
Я понял, это точка старта сейчас будет. Это точка сейчас, где мы.
Yeah, go Ferrari!
Victor, Alexei is pushing on the right now. They won't let him, but he's pushing. I'm not against him. Let him swim first or second, but make sure someone is there to replace him. He'll work for 10 minutes and we'll move back by 20 meters. Look, Victor, we're not shaving until the expedition ends. No shaving, no trimming nails, no brushing our teeth. Alex is really anxious to get in the water. Go.
Пошел! Смотри, смотри, прет! Вот это промотивировали люди!
Look how he's pushing. He's really motivated. Rafał, well done.
Так, Леха не справился. Да, ага. Выходит, один его менять.
So, Alex didn't make it. Dmitry will replace him. How's it going?
Дышись, молодец, поработай. Все нормально? Взялся?
Что?
80 meters are yours, 20 are Alex's, for a total of 100 meters.
Руку. Все, сюда. Молодец.
Everything okay? 180 meters. The 6-hour battle against the strait had gained the race a mere 2 kilometers. By evening, it was clear that a new plan would have to be hatched. In the meantime, a storm broke out in the eastern part of the strait. Wind and side waves rocked the Irtish. The boats had to be lifted on board quickly. It was still possible on the lee side, although there was a risk of damaging the boats if they hit the ship. Once the boats were on board, the Irtish headed to the Diomede Islands into Russian waters. Special credit is due to the Irtish's sailors and rescue divers who manned the escort boats. There were only 4 of them, and each worked up to 12 hours on the water. The swimmers changed, but the sailors were on duty all the time. On the Irtish, pulling the exhausted swimmers up the gangway, and on the escort boats, their performance was remarkable and unforgettable. On the morning of the 9th of August, the expedition was near the Russia-US border. It seemed that only Ratmanov Island's inhabitants, the walruses playing in the stormy waters waving their flippers, were glad to see them. They seemed to be laughing through their thick whiskers at the expedition.
На границу с Америкой. Закончилось разрешение на пребывание судна Irtish.
So we were back on the American border. The Irtish's permit to visit US waters had run out, and we had to go back on the other side of the border, between the small and the Big Diomedes. We were 17 kilometers short of reaching Alaska. The swimmers had not made it because of the powerful currents. It was so strong that the swimmers simply stayed in the same place in spite of all their efforts. The current was like a huge river. Even our boats could only move forward at pedestrian speed. So we spent more than a day there and had to go back. And if we could get permission to re-enter US waters, we would return to the point where the swim was interrupted and try to continue the race.
Вернемся на исходную точку и попробуем продолжить этот заплыв.
By noon, the Irtish's captain was granted permission to re-enter US waters. The news that the fight would continue spread like wildfire around the ship. The race participants, fresh after their first full night's sleep, assembled in a large group.
Very well. And the reason I say that is because I made quite a lot of research. Historically, this region, expeditions take a long time. Very difficult region to operate in. So I think we're doing very well, and we continue. Victor's Bering 7 years to reach America. On us, so far 4 days, we're nearly there, so we're doing very well.
Мы очень хорошо идем, он до того, чтобы пришиться, он сделал историческое самоисследование, это место, и он говорит, что все экспедиции вот на этой точке сталкивались с сумасшедшими условиями, и большинство никак не могли это преодолеть. Так что это нормально, что мы сталкиваемся с сложностью, и это нормально, что мы отошли немножко обратно, потому что там действительно это очень сложные условия. Вот. Но мы сейчас вернемся, и мы эту штуку все равно как бы дадим.
Each brought the best they had to the team to bolster the shared determination to win. There were no rivals. It was truly a united world team, hardened and determined. No one was contemplating giving up. It was at that moment that the Bering Strait had a change of heart. Let's explain. On the night of the 10th of August, the Irtish backtracked along the race route, anchored and hid from the stormy waves and wind in the shadow of the Alaskan Cape. It was here the sailors and expedition commanders, observing the ship's drift on the 200-meter chain, got a tip-off from the strait itself. It turned out that the speed of the current changed with the tides. Between 2 and 6 in the morning, the current slowed down, so the river and the ocean could be dealt with. What a lucky, accidental discovery. An immediate decision was made to continue the race without waiting for the storm to subside. A team of the fastest swimmers went to the starting point. The strongest were determined to take the strait on. "27 swimmers from the UK, America, South Africa, Estonia, Ireland, Italy, Russia, the Czech Republic, Chile and Poland took turns and clawed their way meter by meter along the distance separating the team from the Alaskan shore and victory. On that day, they got 4 kilometers closer. At 2 a.m. in the morning on the 11th of August, the same high-speed group of swimmers continued the battle. After 6 hours, they had fought their way through the current's remaining 3.5 kilometers. Each member of the storm team swam more than 10 times.
Румби 94.
Так, Чигорин, Гусева.
О, Гусева сменила Чигорина.
So, Chigorin, Guseva. Guseva was replaced by Chigorin. Lena Guseva and Sergei Popov.
Сейчас уже прогрессив. Иртыш, на связи.
Come in, Irtish. Once again, how much? 150 meters. Roger that.
Самая главная проблема заключалась в том, что мы воткнулись в течение. Мало того, мы ожидали течение с юга на север, а оно было с востока на запад. Мы практически уперлись в стену, которая нас просто швыряла, отшвыривала.
The biggest problem was that we got stuck in the current. Moreover, we expected the flow from south to north, but it turned out to be east to west. We ran into a wall that threw us back towards Chukotka. We tried as best we could to assess the speed and direction of the flow at various points along the route in the direction of Alaska. We identified an area of about 3 to 4 kilometers, which had to be overcome by any means. We picked the strongest and fastest swimmers for the task, but on average they managed no more than 150 to 180 meters in 15 minutes. They battled against the current, and after 6 hours finally broke through the wall. And so we reached a place where there was a weaker current, going from south to north.
Еще раз, Райан, да?
Once again, Ryan, eh? Yes, 620 meters, course 85. Copy that. Good. 15 minutes. Good enough?
15 минут, нормально? Ну, это означает, что мы достаточно стремительно приближаемся в сторону берега, несмотря на то, что ветер...
It means we're fast approaching the coast of Alaska, despite the wind being 10 to 12 meters per second and waves of around 3 meters. It rains off and on, and there's fog, but Alaska is getting closer. I hope we can finish today, but it's impossible to predict things here. We've had lots of surprises already. This is the Bering Strait. We've been treading water, so to speak, for 3 days now.
Уже была куча неожиданностей для нас. Мы 3 дня практически стояли на одном месте.
By 9 in the morning on the 11th of August, the swimmers had reached calm waters near Cape Prince of Wales. The storm team was replaced with swimmers who had been waiting for their turn to contribute to the cause. A little after 4 p.m, the race reached the finishing line. There's nothing much more to comment on, except to say that this remarkable story was full of odd coincidences. The race started at 4:32, and the finishing line was crossed at the exact same time, 4:32.
Дорогу.
Right, watch it. Alright. Well done, James. Huh? Well done, my mate. Thank you. Great, James. Thank you. Way to go. Thank you. Right. James, give me left hand. Left hand, okay, yeah. Yes, yes. Okay, careful. Watch your hand, James. Watch your hand. Step here. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, step down.
Точка номер 69. До берега осталось километр 200.
Okay. Молодец. Моя душа давно рвалась к этому месту, коляски. И вот моя мечта осуществилась. Я очень счастлив. И благодарю тех, кто организовал этот заплыв, а также судьбу, что она мне преподнесла такой подарок, который я бы не получил нигде в мире.
Доставляем доску! Давай, давай!
Вот сбоку туда еще. Обратно ее, да?
Да вылазь, вот, никакой нет возможности, выходи!
Hello! Hello! Oh, Siberian!
What country are you from?
Russia.
Russia?
Russia.
That's it.
What are all the flags? What do all the flags mean?
Diomede.